up, gang? Welcome back to another episode of X Principles, and this week we're going to talk about how building muscle is crazy hard. So you have to work incredibly hard and push yourself incredibly hard in the gym and eat right if you want to actually build muscle. And we have to build muscle just to combat the atrophy in general, but you have to build muscle if you want to get to your goals, if you want to build your strength. And you shouldn't really be afraid of building too much muscle or getting bulky, because it isn't going to happen by accident. It's extremely difficult to do. If you don't believe me, I can introduce you to a million of my friends who are guys in the gym lifting as hard as they can, trying to build muscle, and still can't quite figure it out. So we're going to focus on pushing ourselves to the right category and gaining an understanding of what it takes to build muscle. First and foremost, if you want to build muscle, you have to apply all of the principles that we've been talking about lately, which is perfect technique. If you don't have perfect technique, you're probably not going to build any muscle. If you're not going through a full range of motion, getting a deep stretch on every single rep, with a controlled, nice and slow, eccentric into that full stretch. If you're not progressively overloading and pushing every single set into that red zone where you're getting close to failure, where it's burning a ton, if you're not doing those things, you're not going to build muscle. But you have to take it even further, too. Let's say you are doing all of those principles. Here's the number 2 factor that we're going to talk about, which is a nice chart of total volume. And it looks like a speedometer here. Red is bad, green is good. Still with me? If you go from 0 volume, which I didn't write, let's say 0 work to max work on this speedometer, you have to do a certain amount just to maintain. If you do nothing, you're losing muscle mass, you're losing strength. We all know that. Use it or lose it. You have to do a certain amount of work just to maintain. Beyond that, nothing happens until you hit a new threshold that we call the minimum adaptive volume. And that's usually 3 really hard sets per muscle group 3 times per week. So about 9 really hard sets where you push yourself almost to failure with perfect technique and all the other principles. Once you go past the minimum adaptive, there's an ideal adaptive, or rather max adaptive. How many sets could you do that you could actually build and grow from? There is a point of diminished returns. If you push too far past that, it actually starts to make you weaker and worse. You have to push yourself a certain distance beyond minimum just to actually start making a little bit of progress, and then you have to push really far beyond that. So if you're going into the gym and you're going through the motions, you're pushing yourself a little bit, you're adding 2 reps for 5 pounds every week or so, whatever, that may or may not be enough to actually push you into the minimum adaptive volume, which is certainly going to happen over time unless you're pushing yourself aggressive enough and reaching for the red zone every single set. So in the gym, you have to kill it every set and do enough sets where you're killing it in order to actually start building muscle, which is a slow process once you actually get there. Doesn't happen very quickly. But beyond that, you have to be eating a certain way to build muscle. And if you are cutting your calories back and your number 1 priority is losing weight and you're restrictive in any capacity, you're probably not building muscle. Not beyond that initial window that we call newbie gains, where everything works at first. So here's a nice chart, another speedometer of calories and how it actually works, that might make some of us feel a little bit better if we overeat on the weekends or we hit our macro numbers or a little beyond during the week or whatever. So this is calories. Less food over here, turn it up, more food over there. Simple. And this is a cutting or bulking speedometer chart for us. Right here in the middle, at balance, would be maintenance. That's how many calories you're consuming each day and how many calories you're burning each day. Your weight, your body fat, your muscle mass would remain the same the entire time. If you start to cut your calories back by a little bit, what's going to happen if you make a very small change is not much at all. You have to make enough of a reduction before things start to change. Your body will just naturally adapt to it if you make a very small change. Same thing with if you overeat by a very small amount. If I cut back 50, 75 calories per day, my body's probably just going to slow down a little bit and adjust. If I overeat by 7,500 calories a day, my body's probably just going to speed up a little bit and adjust. I'm not actually going to notice a weight gain or a weight loss from that. So I have to make a big enough change before things start to happen. If I cut enough calories, I get into this little green zone here where what's happening is we're losing fat, which is what we want if we're losing weight. Not just weight loss, but ideally, mostly or entirely, fat loss is probably what we're looking for. And if we go past a certain point of consuming extra food, what's going to happen is that we're going to build muscle, assuming you're in the gym lifting weights with us. If you're not doing any activity, maybe not. But if you're in the gym lifting weights, once you eat a certain amount of food, the first thing that's going to happen is that you're going to start building muscle mass. You're going to have to go past an additional threshold on each end here before you either start losing weight or gaining weight, which would be accumulation of fat and muscle at the exact same time. So if I'm constantly cutting my calories down and I'm doing a nice, decent, conservative job and I'm only losing fat, or if I cut it really, really, really aggressively and I'm losing fat and lean mass at the exact same time, if I go back to eating at maintenance, I'm certainly not building muscle. There's no way I'm building fat mass. If I start overeating a little bit, there's no way that that's going to turn into body fat itself. You have to eat enough food consistently in order to build muscle. So one, what I want to talk about was the fear of overeating by a little bit and how much work it actually takes to start accumulating body fat. But secondly, in order to build muscle mass, you have to do these three things. One, you have to check off every single one of the principles, every set, every single day, pushing it to the red zone. Two, you have to do at least a certain amount of brutally difficult work. And even then, you're not going to build any muscle unless this third component is in there, which is eating high enough. So if you're always restrictive with your diet, if you're always having your macros right around maintenance or just below, the probability that you're accumulating strength and muscle mass is slim to none after a certain period of time. So if your goal is to build any sort of muscle mass, or we're going through a phase of strength and muscle building, which we all need to go through at different points in time, these are the things that you have to remember. You can't diet and restrict and build muscle at the exact same time. You got to switch through the phases. So for this week, going into the holiday weekend, all of the coaches are going to work on pushing you through all of these principles, pushing you brutally hard every set so you can feel like what it takes to train in the gym to actually build muscle mass. You can enjoy yourself a little bit this weekend, eat some extra food, and watch how you don't actually accumulate body fat, that it's going to convert to muscle mass. And next week, after 4th of July weekend, you're probably going to have one of the strongest weeks you've ever had in the gym from that additional extra calories that you consume. So that's the principle for right now. That's what we're going to talk about over and over again in much smaller, different versions. Do the work.